Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to say that this is not exactly the talk that I was planning to do. I had to change it yesterday and the day before yesterday after a lot of recommendations from law people and from EFF. So, sorry. It's going to be a little bit shorter. It's Electryone. That's a Greek word. Tom did a really good try in pronouncing it. In the land with no sun. You're gonna need a lot of discretion. You're going to see a lot of things that are really strange and really bad. But yeah, but by disclosure is these kind of things. That's me. I'm Vangelis Stykas. I'm currently a CTO at a regulation tech startup. I'm also an independent security researcher. My PhD research interest, I have to at some time accept that I'm not going to be a PhD. I'm not going to be a doctorate. I'm a failed PhD student. It's mainly API for IoT devices and web application security. You can find me on Space Current site as EV Stykas. You can also find me as EV Stykas on Mastodon. And today's talk is about photovoltaic panels. I'm going to quote what a solar PV panel is. It consists of many cells made from layers of semiconducting, blah, blah, blah. It's one glass panel that creates energy from the sun. It is made up of several panels. You can see that usually it is on rooftops. We can see the electricity is used for household, that is AC, blah, blah, blah. The sun is the DC. We need AC. This electricity can be used throughout your home or exported to the grid. We are having photovoltaic inverters. The inverter is the power inverter which converts DC to AC. It is a critical balance of system. It's, as you can see in here, with a lot of strange graphs. We get the sun, we create we get the DC, we create it to AC, and we either save it, store it, or throw it to the grid, as we're going to see later. How do they work? I literally have no idea. If you're here for me to explain to you how solar works, it has a lot of math, it has a lot of strange things. Physicists are going to talk about them. I'm an API guy. I'm going to see them from a totally different point of view. So if you came here for that, sorry, you can leave. I'm not going to explain how it works. Where do we install them? It's the home installation, which you see on the rooftops. It's on roof installation or roof integrated installation, and it's usually from 1 to 10 kilowatts. This is usually directly connected to the house so that it can be off-grid or throws the power to the grid. And the planned installation, which is from 200 kilowatts to 20 megawatts, as we can see a lot of things, usually in the States and in Vegas, where their plan is to maximize the profit and minimize the cost. We can see why I took a look at there. This is the solar market share. Right now it is on 150 billion US dollars, and from 2030 we are looking on 250 billion market share. There is the European Green Deal. I know you don't really care because Brexit and things, but they bring a lot of money. So the plan is no net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. Two socialistic things: economic growth decoupled from resource use, no person and no place left behind. And the great thing that says in here is our lifeline out of the 1/3 of 1.8 trillion euros investment from the next generation EU recovery plan, and the EU's 7-year budget will finance the European Green Deal. If you can do the math, that's a lot of money. So, what we can see in solar market? There are 10 big players. They're mainly Chinese companies. Lots of white label cloud providers that provide generic implementations. We're going to look at some of them. The huge number that you saw before had generated a lot of rush to market symptoms to catch the green wave and the Green Deal. And there are over 20 million current installations. This is the plan from the Green Deal. Right now, as you can see, last year, 2021. We are 2023. So the year before the last year was the first time that solar power has been more than 1 terawatt per day, and the plan says that it's going to be more than 7 terawatts per day. That's a lot of traffic. Some more info, as you can see in here with deep red, you can see the power generation, and from here the per capita energy consumption. The darker the red, the more power it generates and it consumes, and it means that an attack to those photovoltaic will greatly affect those countries. So the solar market is, as I said, generating more than 1 terawatt globally. The solar power is cheaper to produce. It has low maintenance, but a lot of money to actually install it. It can run unsupervised, and as it is expensive to store, it is easier to just throw it in the grid. Really. They are trying to throw things in the grid while they're IoT connected. So if you find a way to get a hold of the photovoltaic, as you can see in Horus scenario, this is where I based the idea of my research. You can see it, as you can see, horusscenario.com. They did a lot of good math, a lot of traffic, a lot of things that I really didn't understand because I'm not a physicist, I'm not a photovoltaic engineer or anything else. So I'm going to quote them. The power grid needs to maintain a constant balance between supply of power and demand of power. Blah, 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 more blah. It means that it's a really, really, really balanced system. And if you take something out of it, they will need to rebalance it, or a lot of shit will hit the fan. So the other thing is that the power grids in Europe are interconnected. So if you somehow, I don't know, take down the grid of the UK, why do I think not, or Germany, it will also cause a lot of trouble in nearby countries, and if you also cause a trouble in nearby countries, it means that it will cause trouble throughout Europe. That's why it's called interconnected, interwinded power grids. This is the theoretical proof of how the Horus scenario is going to take place, and it's based upon a solar eclipse that happened in Germany in 2025. You can see the steep decrease in solar power supply and the steep increase after the solar eclipse has happened. Unfortunately, we can use a mathematical model to estimate the amount of PV energy in a power grid, but we cannot be so precise. So the German power grid at that time, this is on 2015, this has changed, covered 35 to 50% of its power demand using only PV installations. This means this number has changed now. So it means that if you can somehow control the PV installations, you can cut 35 to 50% of the power demand of Germany. And as I said before, this also means that you are going to involve France, UK, and everyone else, because we have a constant power exchange between countries. So what was the Horus scenario? The Horus scenario says that the German guy, who has a really strange name that I cannot pronounce, but is really cool, he has several CVs on one inverter, which is SMA. He changed them to get remote command execution. He got remote command execution on those devices. He interfered the devices to destabilize the grid. What is Electryone? Whoever knows me knows that I'm just doing API and cloud. I'm not doing stuff like hardware or anything else. So unfortunately, because cloud, there's no CVs for me. But because cloud, there's also, I don't need any physical access. I can just do it everything from my home in Greece. You can brick and mass every device that you can firmware update. It is inverter agnostic because, as we said in slide number 4, they are white labeling stuff, so you can force update anything. And we're looking at more than 500 gigawatt. What's my methodology? Burpsuit, download the application if there is an application, decompile it, download it from APK Lab IO. I have a small droplet on DigitalOcean. I'm searching stuff in Sudan.io, and I'm just doing really basic web application pen testing, really basic stuff. How I do it? Usually they have a demo account. If they don't have a demo account, I try to register a new account. I find the obvious web issues. I try to find a way to control devices by exploiting those obvious issues, get platform admin, try to firmware update stuff, and then I'm not profiting, unfortunately. I'm just struggling for a response for all the vendors. As you're going to see, most of the vendors didn't even care to respond. This is the 5 platforms that I took a look at and successfully exploited. SolarMan, I got platform admin, but there was no firmware update. SunSync, Solax, Growat, and Injecon, I got platform admin and firmware update, which means that I could potentially brick everything because, as you might think, there is no signing in the firmware. There's just firmware update. You send them, and they update it. The other result is me getting all those ads throughout my phone, throughout my web browsers. It's like I'm a freaking PV installation. It's like all my home is just these advertisements nowadays. Disclosure, and that's a really painful story. More than 90 days have passed from every disclosure that I tried. Only one vendor responded and acted on the disclosure in a really good manner. The disclosure had full technical information. I tried really hard to get any reaction from them. I sent multiple emails on any email that I could find. I reached out from Twitter. I even called on several Chinese phones that they were. Most of them didn't speak English. The people who speak English didn't understand what the security issue is. So, yeah, I don't know what I should do anymore. The disclosure responses. SolarMan, who is an A+, they responded, they fixed it in 5 days, they checked out, we're going to see what else they did. SunSync, they had no response for 5 months. Solax gave me an auto-respond and responded on my Twitter DMs. That's a win for me after 5 months. Growat asked me where I'm from after 6 months, and Injecom didn't respond at all. So, I had 30 more slides that were explaining what were the issues. The big issue is that I had a bigger discussion yesterday and the day before yesterday with a couple of people who understand law way better than me and told me that I shouldn't, on the current situation, global situation, and how we are, drop 0 days that could cause, I don't know, power outages in countries with a war right now happening. So unfortunately, you're not going to have 0 days from me. What's the plan? The plan is have their providers act on the reported vulnerabilities, fix them, prove that you can control gigawatts of power effectively, destabilizing country power grids. We are not going to prove them, but we're going to see that we could prove it. We could help avoiding global outage and, I don't know, make world a safer place and global peace and all these things, I guess. What have I found? Insecure direct object references, remote command execution, broken authentication, broken authorization, more IDORs, and no authentication at all. What did I found? Lots of personal data for a lot of people throughout the globe. Access to administrative accounts and panels, ways to manipulate and brick panels, and access to internal networks where the panels were installed. That's what its provider claims to generate per day. I would take that with a pinch of salt because I think they're overestimating. If you sum it up, that's more or less 700 gigawatts. That's 70% of the global solar generation. I would say that we are closer to 450,000 gigawatts. It's way smaller, but it's still a cool number, if you ask me. And I know I missed some vendors. I did take a look at them. I didn't find a vulnerability or an obvious vulnerability because I was not doing a full pen test. I was just looking at the low-hanging fruits as always. So the first provider is SolarMan. You can see it. They're a white label, pretty huge operator. It's the only vulnerability that I'm going to be specific. They had an IDOR on the user add functionality. You could add a user with any privilege on any group. Groups and organization were consecutive integers, so you could just add a user anywhere and take a look at it. What was the action? Full functionality of the application. There was a potential GDPR violation with a leak of user and company data. I had all the info on plants and power generated, all the info of the people. So, yeah. Not that bad, if you ask me. They responded in 2 days. They fixed it in 5 days. They chased for verification. They then tried to ask me if I had more info about other vendors, which I told them, look at the Cumri conference. I'm not going to expose anyone else. But they were cool. They did it like A+ for them. The vulnerabilities are going to happen. So this is Sunsync. I have found 5 different companies that are white label on them. They have IDORs everywhere. Everything is an integer. You can +1 things. You can do whatever you want. This is what you can do. So they have a full functionality of the application, potential GDPR, info on plants and power generation. You can interact with the plants. You can update the firmware on both the gateway and the inverter. You can backdoor it so that you can access the network, and you can also have the platform admin in here. In here, let's see, you can see the gateway firmware and the inverter firmware of all the products that they have. And in here, you can see the notification on who logged in, where, and what operation they wanted to do. And that's their disclosure. I really tried really hard for them because they're 200 gigawatts of power, but they really never responded at any point on even on my phones. They didn't have anyone who was speaking English. Third one is Growat. It is also known as G-inverter. It's the biggest of all, at least to my understanding, because they have more or less 5 or 6 million installations. And that's how I got access to there. You can see that there is a serial number from a Google search. I just got that serial number and registered it so that I could have a demo account. And then I understood that I didn't need to do that because there was no authentication. So their application was just accepting, then logging in, and then you could just say, give me that serial number without any authentication, and yeah, you could get whatever you want. From the bottom-up platform admin, backdoor the network, firmware update on gateway and inverter 2, interact with the plants. I'm not even going to care about the GDPR anymore because, yeah. Yeah, that was one of their emails. Due to the spring festive holidays, we can reply in time. Unfortunately, my first email was on October, so that was on January 26th, so they had enough time, I guess. And the other response that I get was, would you please advise which country you are from, which makes no sense. I'm like, I'm from Greece, but why would you care where I'm from? But after that, I got no answer. So, again, disclosure is no response. Solax is a strange one. So they are probably the biggest of all that don't white label. So you can find a lot of Solax power inverters. They didn't have an IDOR, but the only one that they had was really, really critical. So they saved the issue for the one that really mattered. Platform admin, backdoor to the network, firmware update, yada, yada, yada. You get the point. Everything is really bad. You can see the customers in here. You can see that you can firmware update. You can see that they're online, their username, their password, their site name. I'm admin, so you get what you can see. Another nice one. That's the auto-generated email. They're extremely busy at the moment. I'm going to say that they were extremely busy throughout the 5 months that I was trying to disclose it. They will respond within 10 working days. I don't know if they work once per month. They had 8 months, so they should respond at some time. And they also provided with a really good YouTube video that could tell me how to reconnect my Solax inverter. Yeah, that didn't work. Then I literally hassled them on Twitter, telling them, can you please answer, please, please, please. So it's like, do you have problems with emails to us? Hello, yes. Which mails has you been sending and received no reply? Let me check. That's on February 2nd. He had 9 days, so I guess he should have checked. Nothing from them too. Last one is Injecon. Is a really, really nice inverter. This is one that my mother has on her roof, unfortunately. They were missing the basic concept of authorization. All IDs are consecutive integers. You can access anything, anywhere, anytime. Again, I think you believe that I'm just copy-pasting stuff, but I'm not. I have verified that I had access on all those. Platform, backdoor, firmware update, interact with the plans. Yeah, it's bad. So as you can see in here, this is my mom's account. I'm not with my mom's account logged in, so you can see the system. They also have a really nice feature which is called command line. You have literally command line from that. Devices, location, alarm notification, device ID, full stop. You have access to the network. I tried LinkedIn ad, so I added on LinkedIn everyone that I could find. Their answer was, we don't hire. It's like, I don't want to work for you. I want to help you fix your stuff. But how could you prevent? Go with a provider that will act on problems. Try to isolate IoT devices on their own VLANs. This is something that I'm saying, vulnerabilities will happen. It's how they treat the vulnerabilities and how they act on the reporting that makes sense. That was me, I think. Sorry for being a cut short, but I couldn't really disclose the vulnerabilities. But feel free to go and look at them. I do believe that you are going to find them. It's not really difficult to find, but yeah. Any questions?
So what's kind of the worst case scenario if you did all your magical numbers zero? If you did all of them in a row, that's what?
Brick all of the devices and resolving on a blackout of certain countries that would then potentially have a snowfall effect and blackout other countries. And yeah, but I don't know. I haven't tried it, obviously. And I'm not legally required to say that. It's obvious because we still have power. So, yeah. Anyone else? I did. I'm still waiting. But as I have other government agencies that I did other disclosures, I have high hopes on them helping me. No. So it's like, I can tell you that one of them responded and they're good, but I haven't have them installed. I don't know what they do. It's like, I'm not recommending anyone due to obvious reasons. So I could say if someone seems that it will respond to their vulnerabilities, go with them. So if they seem that they don't respond, I wouldn't go with them. But
Do you think there will be, given you had one response, why they would these inverters market, do you think there's a chance possibly that actually get backported, or is this a case of each one was sufficiently unique in implementation, etc.?
that's a vulnerability in the cloud. So it should be backported and easily patched. But if you are missing on your cloud the whole concept of authentication, you have to rework a lot of things in who develops what in there. So you could update the firmware. One of them had literal terminal SSH, so you could install Nmap in there and scan the network that the inverter was installed to. That's why I said use VLANs, or I don't know. I'm not a network engineer, so I'm not going to. Anyone else? Thank you.